Welcome to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast, the podcast all about the delicate balance between people and business, and quite literally, reconnecting the two. My name is Tracy Rubin, and I've spent nearly my entire professional career in HR. Join me as I share stories, opinions, and words of advice with you each week. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here for another week. If you can't already tell my voice, I am so excited for this week's guest because Brett Turley has been on this podcast before. And Brett actually is, first of all, has an incredible career. And if you want to listen to the first episode that he did on my podcast, you can go back to episode 50. We're basically recording this like a year later, which is insane. And it just goes to show you how time is cyclical, history is cyclical, and things always come back around. But I'm so excited to have Brett back on the podcast. And just so you know, there is an update in what he's doing, and we're going to talk all about it. And I am going to replay a part of the last podcast that we did because it's just incredible, but I'll get into that. Let me first remind you who Brett is. He is the CEO and co-founder of bit.leave, and bit.leave is the world's simplest and most inclusive benefits platform that rewards staff with more time off or more money while reducing excess leave liabilities on a balance sheet. And for all those HR folks listening, you know, anything that can simplify that process is a good one. So I'm going to bring Brett on. Brett, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me back on. I didn't scare you last time then.
No scares. You made it back.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Now that we've reviewed episode 50 and sort of like went back with what I said and what I predicted, I'm actually kind of happy that we're doing it so we can go through what we found, because I think if I guess right, the audience will get a lot out of it from learning from what I did wrong and what I've learned through the last 12 months.
Totally. And I'm going to play the part of episode 50 that we're referring to, because this is the first time in podcast history where we can say with definitive, conclusive response that a prediction has come true. And I make a lot of predictions on this podcast, so I'm so excited about this. So when I go back to edit, I'm going to add in that clip. The prediction was basically that you were creating this app. I would love to hear your expert take on what you think could be the case for the future.
It's pretty tricky to predict 5 years in the future at this
maybe a year.
Pace of development. No, we can shoot 5 years. I've got some pretty bold predictions myself because I'm going to build this wellness app, this ecosystem that uses machine learning to dial into these habits and things like that.
So walk us through everything.
Okay, so it was about a year ago we spoke. And I believe I was just at the end of almost 12 months of testing the basis of what I was going to build into this machine learning / habit shaping model. I had a corporate program running, a pilot program that was going really well. And so what I realized throughout the process, though, it's incredibly hard to scale when you build a business based off your own coaching ability or service, so a service-based business, to then transition that to tech. So was lucky enough to come into the Antler Startup Accelerator here in Sydney. They have them worldwide. There's a few in the US as well, with the aim of doing two things. Firstly, finding a technical co-founder, which was probably where my gaps lie because I'm non-technical. If you've listened to the previous episode, I used to point a dog at bombs in Afghanistan, and I've transitioned into tech. I sort of just found myself here. And then the second part was to spend 10 weeks working so deeply on a problem space with the hope something would fall out of it. And that's where bit.leave sort of grew from. So I had this business with the problem of not scaling past service, needed to transition it to that machine learning model or app that we were going to build. And then through that process at Antler, tease the problem around burnout and churn out enough that we found this correlation between the way people use their leave and their risk of burnout and churn within an organization. Now, if anyone's been tracking the last 2 or 3 years, like nearly everyone listening to this podcast would have, people haven't taken leave because they haven't been able to travel. They've been locked down with the job market and the insecurities economically at the moment. People are more likely to stay put in jobs they don't like because it's a paycheck. So we had this perfect storm of excess leave just accruing on balance sheets. I think from what we could ascertain, I think it's accrued by an extra 32% over the last 2 to 3 years. Yeah, and if you're running a small business or even a large business, those accruals and those problems creeping slowly and steadily on the balance sheet can actually really affect cash flow, borrowing capacity, the ability to pivot your business if you hit hard times, right? And then through the customer development process, talking to really, really smart HR people, finance people, we found this really juicy problem of those leave liabilities. And then we found that correlation. So we had this awesome problem of employees needing more time off and more money, and balance sheets with these excess leave issues. And that's where the fundamental hypothesis of bit.leave came from, which is giving employees access to more time off or more money.
That's amazing. And you said something that I will probably never forget, which is part of what kind of allowed you to come up with this name, bit.leave, which is that a little bit of leave goes a long way. Tell us what that means and what that means to you, because I totally agree and I love it.
So we went through the early stages of building this name for the company. I think it was at week 6 of the program I pitched the idea and the concept, and I just came up with something that was a bit like tongue in cheek, because we obviously on the branding you can see here we have the bit.leave, so it plays on the shortened links bit.ly, and then Bitcoin as well, obviously that currency piece, because we do play in the leave as a currency space. But the fundamental principle, a bit of leave goes a long way, regardless of it's how you want to use it or how you want to monetize it, optimize it, what you want to use it for. It goes a long way for anyone in their life, whether it's taking a break from work to reduce some of those burnout symptoms, or whether it's cashing the leave out to go and save, put it towards a deposit for your first home. Those are the sort of impacts and the use cases we're seeing now that we're out in the market and we have our version 1 with our closed beta customers.
That's amazing. When I was looking at your website, and we're obviously connected on LinkedIn, I really, first of all, for me, it's like all about looking at who is behind these applications and these ideas. So you could have put like a new mattress out in the market, right? Like you could have said I'm selling mattresses now, and I'd be like, oh, Brett's got this. I believe this is going to work, right? But it's not just that. Like, not only do I believe in you as a leader and a person, because I've had the opportunity to connect with you now multiple times over the last couple of years, but this is an application that really makes a lot of sense. And when I was looking at your website, again, because, what kind of friend am I if I don't know the ins and outs of what my friends are doing? But I was seeing like the gamification of leave really come through, and that there's this rewards element to, as you mentioned too, to focus on solving this critical problem. And this has been a problem for time immortal, that people have burnout and they experience burnout and they know they need to do something about it. But there's this conundrum of finding an employer who's willing to support you in preventing burnout and also helping you to treat your burnout. But then you're like, oh, well, I don't know. Am I going to drop the ball if I take time off? So there are all of these things. However, what you're doing differently is, to me, in the rewards space of preventing burnout and focusing on leave. So can you walk us through a little bit what some of your findings were when you were speaking with these folks in different areas of business in solving this problem? Like, where did this realization that rewarding behaviors would improve, or improve the result or improve the outcome?
It started at the very beginning of, well, maybe even before the program, and from my experience coaching for 8 years, people are really hard to help change because they have to go on that journey themselves effectively. I was just a conduit for the information bridge, I believe, when I coach, like giving people timely information that it's relevant to them. So we dug into the corporate wellness model at the very start of the program, and what we found was well-being models, perks platforms, and all of those things that have accelerated over the last 24 months see less than a 10% adoption rate, meaning
Wow.
users or employees come into the platform, they check it out, they maybe engage in it once, and then it just sits in the back end. And what we found is HR teams, although well-intentioned, end up really just with something that helps with marketing on the front end, with talent attraction, with really poor utilization. And you'll notice, and the points I'll point out here, which people can go verify themselves, you will not see a single rewards platform or perks platform talk about month-on-month use or return visitors. They don't mention churn from internal employees once a product's adopted, because they sell 12 months or longer deal cycles. Once they get it in, they leave it. The follow-on and the impetus to build relevant products that people want to use all the time just doesn't happen. And that isn't actually entirely their fault. With everything that's come over the last probably 12, 36 months, people have had the control of their lives taken away from them. And we're in desperate need of pulling that control back in some way. So instead of trying to build this habits platform with machine learning that I originally thought, I actually went the opposite way. Instead of providing so much detailed technology behind it, it provides all these relevant content, products, help. Why don't we just strip it back to the fundamental human needs that make us feel psychologically safe? And usually it comes down to money. Because when you don't have money, you're fearful of what's in the future. When you have money, you feel like you can tackle it because you can pay for bills, pay for medical costs, afford out-of-pocket expenses when they come up as a surprise. So then when we pulled that back, we did the customer development process, because it really became quickly that, like, there's a lot of people playing in that wellness space as well. There's some really great companies doing really amazing things with AI and machine learning already. So the gap, the jump is just too far. Right. You're playing with people that raise like $330 million in seed or Series A funding. It's just probably not good business to go on and compete against those types of guys unless you had some really, really amazing insight that no one else in the world knew. So we pulled that part. We pulled out the current construct of rewards and recognition programs, realized that they only sort of accommodate between 10 to 15% of your organization based on their life stage and goal. And then we looked at what everyone else wants. And then we found this piece of, I just want more time away from work to spend it with my family, work remotely, travel whilst I work. So that digital nomad lifestyle that's surging at the moment. Yeah. And then the fundamental elements of paying your bills and not worrying about where your money's coming from the next time. And particularly in Australia, there's so many regulations and laws around paid time off, very different to the US. We have to have a minimum, like we can't cash out anything unless it's more than 4 weeks of excess leave. Like there's some really good controls to protect employees in the country, but the leave liabilities are still growing. So we stripped that back. We looked at what could work. We looked at how it could work from a business side as well, which is reducing leave liabilities, but then framing leave use in a different light, not just preventing burnout, but why can't employers use it as a performance discussion point? As in, you're starting to get a little bit irritable, or your performance wasn't as great this month. Are you just feeling tired? Do you need to take a break from work? And actually engage in that conversation. So we're in the middle of building out that predictive algorithm that looks at leave use and salary, tenure, seniority, life stage, working out what that model looks like to then help provide manager conversations, which is often the single point of failure, because HR is controlled to get it down. It's actually the manager that needs to do it within their team, and
Mhm.
it's a finance problem. So you've got this perfect triangle of things that just don't move because the process is really ineffective. That was probably a lot of rambling because I
No.
can talk from any sort of angle. So I'll probably stop there and let you ask another question so we don't
No,
just have me talking for the next however long.
you can talk as long as you want. For anyone that's watching the video, all I did was nod. I was just nodding the whole time because I'm like, preach, amen, preach, amen. And actually, like, it's, one of the thoughts that I have is that when we think about leave sometimes in the US, sometimes we only think about a leave of absence. When someone goes out for an extended period of time for a medical or other type of situation. But that's not intrinsically what a leave is. When we think about paid time off, holidays, one single day out of that's a leave from the business. And I think one of the areas, speaking as an American, where we have to really improve the way that we see leaves is that there is a stigma around going out for an extended period of time. I remember when I had colleagues who would go on their honeymoons for more than 2 weeks. People were like, oh my God, I can't believe they're going out for more than 2 weeks. I'm like, you hopefully get married once. I mean, like, why not? I didn't have the privilege of going out for more than 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, like, what is causing the stigma more than this feeling or perception that the only way a business can function is when people are in it constantly. And when you were talking about how this could be something that is a gauge or a measure for performance, I was like, this in my mind, obviously, because you didn't hear me say this, but in my mind, I was like, this is the type of innovation I'm talking about. This is what's going to help businesses change the way not only that they work and expect people to work, but actually the way that they function. When we stop praising people for working those long hours and putting in triple time, working through the weekends, missing birthdays to get that thing done, which sometimes it's required. Sometimes it needs to happen, especially if you're starting your own tech company and an app called bit.leave. You're going to put in a ton of hours. I get it. But you're doing it for the good of the world. Not to excuse it, but this is unfortunately what a lot of companies see as praiseworthy. I have heard managers say, thanks to so-and-so for working while sick to get this thing done. And I'm like, why are we praising this? Like throughout my career. And this is, so coming back to this point that like, this is the innovation I'm talking about. It all comes down to how we meet at the intersection of working and not working. If we can praise not working as much as we can praise working and doing both really well, then we're going to have some magic happen. And so I want to ask a specific question here. If you're able to share, have you seen more money taken, like more, I should say, have you seen more employees using bit.leave or in bit.leave? I recognize it's still in version 1. Have you seen more employees opt in for more money or more employees opt in for more time off?
Okay, before I answer that question, I'll actually highlight 2 really, really interesting points you made. Firstly, your reference to tech founder, like owner methodology or like mindset, sorry. And it's all around the principle of skin in the game. You're intrinsically going to work harder, longer, further, faster when you have more skin in the game. Problem is when you get to employing employees, they won't have that same skin in the game as you. But when you model that behavior based off your leadership style, your work style, I would say leadership, and then expect people to follow and you haze them for not following that sort of process or methodology, you're the problem, right? So it's a top-down approach. It's led from the top. If you've got a bunch of people with equity in your company and you're driving hard and they love working because they actually treat it as their hobby as well, fantastic. Fill your boots. Do what you want to do long weekends, work together on weekends, do late nights together. But then it drills down to the employee persona. And from what we are starting to uncover, depending on your life stage, income, skin in the game, you are going to have a specific persona and how long you actually deem is enough at work. You can only burn the midnight oil for so long before you start to feel those effects of burnout. And actually talking a bit personally now, this may be a little bit confronting for people. I was diagnosed with PTSD after my time in the military, but then also had some really unfortunate events of losing a daughter at birth and things like that. But I also know I have a tipping point for my own burnout cycle, right? So it's coming from a very experiential proof point. I know I'm probably about a 50 to 60 hour a week person because I'm working on a product I love. I absolutely love, but I can't go over that. Otherwise, I just start to dip into all those negative consequences.
Right.
So we're trying to do that in the platform, highlight which ways of working, whether it's staggered throughout the day where you do blocks of 2, 4, 6 hours, whatever that is, and then you have a break. Or if you're a developer and you like working at night because you don't have idiot salespeople like me bothering you about what's going on with this feature. I just tried to demo it.
Right.
Like you don't have those. So you might want to be a night worker, right? And that's that asynchronous operations that I learned in the military. We actually did it really well. So it's all about trying to actually match that to your life stage, your user persona, your skin in the game, and then optimize that construct for you. So now coming back to the question, what we're seeing is from our survey data, we're literally version 1 in our closed beta. We put our first customers on this in about 2 weeks ago. So we're super early. We've done a whole heap of background research and customer interviews around it. So some stats I can pull out of our recent survey we published. 50% of people just simply want more money. Plain and simple, cash in bank, stop telling me where to spend it. I want to go use it. Because a single mum that has 3 kids at home that's trying to also climb the corporate ladder, her version of wellness is paying for dinner for the kids on Friday night so she doesn't have to clean. It could be. Sorry, I shouldn't blanket like that.
No,
I'm
I like
that
it.
when I get home. Like,
it's possible.
And then a young hard charger, a young female that's in a startup that wants to prove herself, wants to do those big hours, absolutely loves the mission the company's on. Her money is going to be put towards L&D. She's going to upskill. She's going to do those extra courses, read those extra books, and that's where she wants to spend. So everyone has these unique differences. And that's why I was like, why can't we just build it on those fundamental needs as opposed to trying, you need to go spend 10% off at an electronics store to fit out your workstation or whatnot. Of course, there's other sort of programs like detailed management programs are actually really important to help people develop into leaders and those. So not all benefits will fit into this. But the fundamental pieces, instead of trying to put these boxes around your employees, give them the autonomy. And then finally, 34% mentioned more time off. But that's not necessarily strict time away from work. That's that flexible approach that I talked about.
Yeah.
So they just want the ability to choose again. It's all about autonomy. Like we can't say that enough. And then lastly, there was about 16% across 3 different other areas, which is perks platforms because they actually like shopping and buying from their favorite brands, which is usually the perks that get offered because they are popular brands. L&D programs, like they're actually wanting to progress through their career. So giving them the opportunity for that makes a lot of sense anyway. Yeah. And then finally was an office. Lowest ranking thing was an office. But it wasn't the office culture and meeting people and connecting. It was the actual physical space itself. They don't want it. They're not interested. 4% of people want to be in the office. But nearly everyone wants a chance to actually connect with their colleagues and their employees in a meaningful way. So whether that's an offsite every 3 months or a 12-month get-together, but it doesn't have to be a physical in-person office because I think we've broken those shackles over the last 24 months.
That is the ultimate challenge, that no one wants to work next to someone else, and yet they all want to have fun with their coworkers. Like they want the chance to connect, but like they also want the true autonomy and flexibility to do and work and live as they so please. And I loved this understanding and example of the asynchronous work, because this is something, we're continuing to see businesses having to flex to the times, and they're going, there's an ebb and flow. It's like, okay, well, we had to automatically go remote, but we want to be hybrid. We have these office spaces, but we want to get flexibility. And true flexibility is saying, there's an office here, you can use it, but we're not requiring, you can work whenever you want. That's true flexibility. Hybrid models, even saying remote, but you have to work 9 to 5, it's not truly flexible. But really, when we think about meeting people where they are, it's saying, okay, well, we're hiring you because we trust you to do the job in whatever hours make sense to you, and this is what it looks like. And so I translate this all in my mind to back to this 4-day work week, which I think about all the time. I did an episode on it like a year and a half ago. I'm sure the listeners are sick and tired of hearing me talk about this, but actually there are some major US-based companies that have done trials in Australia, New Zealand, London, and other parts of the world showing that a 4-day work week, 32 hours, not 40 hours crammed into 4 days. Okay, let's be really clear here.
Yeah, the real 4-day work week, not just not a pseudo 4-day work week where they're like, but you've got to get all these hours.
Yeah, right. We'll give you 4 days, but you're going to have to work 10 hours a day. I mean, no, We're talking 32 hours across 4 days. It works. People are finding, like, the proof is in the data. And so when you talk about, the 50% of people just wanting more money in their pockets, I get it. I've been there. That I probably can still relate to this because everyone can relate to this at some level. There's always an opportunity cost that at some point there's a juncture where you decide, okay, well, maybe I don't need more money. I need more time. But then this 34% saying that more time is valuable to them. This is where I say the 4-day work week is just totally a logical explanation for this 80 some odd percent of people saying it's money or time off, because actually there's no reason why someone working 32 hours a week and getting the same amount of productivity and work done as they would in 40 hours, why wouldn't they make the same amount? And now they have an extra day. People, ever since I was a kid, we were always talking about how Saturday and Sunday needed a triplet. It needed another day in the weekend. So it's just like to me, it's all very poetic about how all of these influences from employee demand have impacted the way that businesses, creators like yourself, entrepreneurs have approached this challenge. I'm sure that you have come in contact. Don't let me assume, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that you've come in contact with business leaders who are like, we don't really want to offer more benefits. We already do right by our employees. Like, we want that. We offer 2 weeks of PTO. That's standard. We offer parental leave. That's standard. Obviously, depending on laws and requirements. What is your response to them when you're really focused on changing behaviors in the workplace?
Okay. There were so many good points you actually hit on just then too.
Am I moving too fast?
I think no. It's just let's bring this back to a really fundamental psychological principle, which is the theory of self-determination. People want the autonomy to make the choices they feel necessary. People want the knowledge to help them make those right choices. Yet, knowledge, I don't think is an issue in this day and age. We all have a mobile phone in our pocket, yet we choose to use it looking at cat memes. So we're probably just squandering a bit of the knowledge piece there. And then finally, they want the relatability. So that community element where they feel like they're connected and involved. And that's been probably one of the longest deep-seated needs that we've ever had, right? We're communal creatures. And then back on my sort of remote working sort of methodology, there are some companies that actually shouldn't have remote working methodologies. Like anyone that is in manufacturing, you can't do it from home.
Yeah.
So there is we don't want to get the zealots out of joint and just have them burning the podcast down because we're saying really define things. And that's the problem. That's the thing. There's elements that apply to your workforce and there are elements that aren't.
Yeah.
And the moment you try and put a box around it is when you've lost. And that's where HR teams really need to keep questioning their methodologies and getting those tests inside organizations done. Not going all in burn the boats like we're
Right.
doing it this way. Do split tests. That's how we've got to where we are, right? So if we talk about that that user persona of people, that an organization that does the standard benefits that are legislatively required, whether it's US, whether it's Australia, wherever, our product can still work because you're still going to have an excess leave issue. You're still going to have a productivity issue, particularly if you are putting set constructs around people. So what we're tracking is the way people use their leave and those user personas we mentioned, and then doing predictive analytics and then helping managers have those discussions as well. So there's a lot of automation behind the stuff that we're doing to help make HR managers actually get back to the stuff they joined the industry to do, not exporting spreadsheets and sending emails saying you've got to get XY person to take time off. So it's all about enabling those types of organizations to get that 5-10% out. That's just that little bit better, that helps move their bottom line, that helps reduce their employee attraction costs, improves their employee value proposition. Because usually the people with the set constructs are pretty well-formed organizations that have got a great track record, great cash flow. That it's like the whole falling into the trap of this is how we've always done it. But it's just getting them to realize you probably shouldn't be wasting your time with spreadsheets and reporting. You should be able to have that real-time data available, and then you should just be doing organizational change to go to that next evolution of your company, which every company is in regardless of stage. And then development of your actual staff. Talking to a manager who is a brand new manager that has an extreme work ethic because now they've got more skin in the game because they're getting paid X amount more than what they used to. Now they're embodying they're forcing those behaviors on their team. Their team's burning out. Like, how do you coach that? That's what the HR manager should be doing, not just compliance and tapping away on the keyboard, thinking I'm making a difference by building another policy. They should be doing that real impactful stuff that I put my money on it. You joined HR to do, right?
That's right. That's right. No, you're absolutely right. And this is where, we've had a lot of conversations on the podcast, like over these last few years, a couple of years where, focused on technology and how technology can help improve employee experience. And it can. The challenge for HR business leaders and other business leaders is that they have to allow the technology to actually help them so they can remove some of their responsibilities from a manual perspective to reinvest that time, just like you're saying. Because you ask any HR leader what their biggest challenge is or what their biggest, detractor from their own experience in their careers, it's almost always going to be the manual crap that they spend their time doing. I can tell you from my own experience, it's that stuff that is like, why am I doing this when a computer or a program could be doing this for me? And this is where, when you find technology that can actually solve the problem that you have, not only at an organizational level, but also support the functional leader in removing their own responsibility and involvement, you're cutting out the middle person. You're enabling all parties to actually have that time reinvested into their experience.
Yeah, I think that's where also now the technology space is shifting with AI, machine learning.
Yeah.
I think what we haven't done well previously, like I'm not a very big fan of the employee NPS.
Interesting.
Because hear me out here. Like, it is a good tool. It's been great for a long time because it's allowed us to get data we never would have been able to get. But I think it's going to evolve very quickly because NPS, you can add the questions you want. You can add your own confirmation bias in those questions, and then you look for the data that suits your agenda.
1,000%.
That's what, even though we just released a survey, which is kind of hypocritical, right? I'm very cautious. Like, I went off just brass tacks numbers that couldn't be disputed. So we didn't try and hedge the data to one way to drive our agenda in the survey. It did because I think we're on a trend, but it didn't do it completely. So, for instance, there's this really interesting result. We asked people if they were happy with their benefits program. 76% of respondents said yes. But when we asked a follow-on question, now any good product manager knows this about follow-on questions, close-ended questions, open-ended questions. We asked another question. What would your ideal benefits program do for you? Or what would it contain? 100% of respondents all had ways to improve it. Now, there was a couple of other questions. Now, this is going to sound really bad because I've forgotten them because I've been put on the spot here. What it does put forward is a potential case of loss aversion bias, right? So we're more afraid of losing what we have than gaining something new. Because we didn't mention our product in the survey at all, we couldn't prime them to say, this is what we're doing, which is why I think it's actually a really good body of work that we've got. But when you talk about employees, they're going to say yes to having something as opposed to nothing.
Totally.
If they have it, right? It's like the old Henry Ford quote. If I listened to my customers, they would have told me I had to build a faster horse. Like there has to be some element where you go against the grain a little bit, right? So then we talk about NPS. The next evolution, which is what we're priming for, is passive analytics, which is an NPS type of thing that's actually based on user data, not their opinion or perception. Because the leading indicator of future performance is previous behavior. But when you're giving someone a chance to interject and actually paint themselves in a better light, or with an NPS for an employee, for instance, say you're my manager and you flame me on Friday because I absolutely dropped the ball with a project and it was my fault. Say you have a word to me and then I have the NPS come out every Friday, which they usually do. I get on there and go, oh, I hate this place. and it's not an accurate representation, right? Yeah. But what we can do with historical pay data, leave data, and a few other little elements we're sort of looking at, which we haven't quite solved yet, is you can actually get an actual point of a track record of productivity, performance, profile, and prediction. So that's what we're sort of working towards, actual data. And it's not about abdicating like managers and HR. It's actually giving them the data to provide the right surgical intervention, as opposed to those big blanket policies that they usually do, because unfortunately, HR is just too time poor, right? You've usually got 3 to 4 people in an organization, or one person per department, per organization, and they've got 400 other things driving every agenda. That's why these things fall over, because they just don't have time to run it to ground. So that's where we're looking at those automations, passive analytics. And an interesting note on the survey, there's this really strong user group or group amongst the population that want to be rewarded based on measurable performance.
Oh God!
So that
really?
goes against the monitoring debate of security. It's not completely against it. It has to be done responsibly. But if a company can work out how to measure their employees based on outcome and make it tangible, and then reward them based off that, that's where you're going to start to see a true high performance culture.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you only get a response from like that from someone that's like, I know I'm going to hit all of my targets, so I want to be compensated for each thing. And I mean, again, sweeping generalization there. But you know, what I was thinking about as you were sharing this is that people also only know what they know. So if you have someone reviewing your benefits and they're fresh out of college and they're like, wow, someone's giving me access to medical, dental, vision, that's amazing. I get 1 week off of vacation. That's amazing. And everyone else is like, this is terrible. But this is, you know, it's, you only know what you know. And the other thing too, I just want to, in case there are listeners who are not familiar with ENPS or NPS, NPS stands for Net Promoter Score. So if you go into a Target and you take a survey and they're like, did you enjoy this experience? 1 out of 10. And you're like, hated it. 1, you're a detractor for them and you didn't have a good experience. And so the NPS registers that. ENPS, or Employee Net Promoter Score, is basically the same thing, saying, would you recommend this company to someone else, or whatever question the company decides to ask? And on a scale of 1 to 10, you're asked and you're like, absolutely, love everything about this place. 10, you're a promoter. And it fluctuates. There are surveys that can go out weekly, monthly, etc. And if you hate your manager that day because they told you that the project that you did is total crap and you have to do it over after you spent 60 hours on it, yeah, you're probably not going to feel so great about the company, but that doesn't necessarily represent how you feel holistically.
Yeah, well, look at Glassdoor, right? Glassdoor's made an incredible fortune out of letting people plaster companies with like bad
keyboard
reviews.
warriors,
and it's all,
right?
Yeah, and it's always the guys that have a negative experience that are the loudest voices, right? So we talked about that KPI bit, right? And I think, yes, you got those high performers that always hit. They're just legends. Like they just love what they do. They've fallen into their passion. If you stripped them out and put them somewhere else, they probably wouldn't perform because they're not in their passion. But then there's also that middle group of your organization. Like you've got your performers, and then you've got your 9 to 5, or the not 9 to 5, but the not minimum requirements, but the 40-hour a week consistent players that turn up every day, day in, day out, do a great job, and rarely ever get noticed, because usually sales teams only get rewards and based on performance, right? So what we're looking to do is actually be able to help companies build those constructs of what their ideal consistent player is and reward that appropriately. And then if people want to go to management levels or climb that career, they have to display above and beyond what is expected. But by having those clear expectations as well, it allows your managers to have the right conversation, and there's no ambiguity around what's expected. We don't do that well enough yet, because managing is the hardest thing you will ever do in your career. Being a leader is hard. Setting the right values yourself is easy because you drive that. You are the captain of your ship. And you got a team of 10 people, you're not the captain anymore. It's everyone else, and consensus and all sorts of stuff. You got to be a bit of a diplomat sometimes, and then you got to work out how to get the best out of all different types of personalities. So that's what we're going to try and help do. Find those constructs. If we talk about long term, I'll make another prediction.
This is what I was going to ask you. Yes. Okay. I feel like this is the right time. Let's make another prediction. Go for it.
I'll make another one because I just feel like it just gives me another North Star to aim
Yes.
for. If we talk about 5 to 10 years from now, in the platform itself that we're building, you will be able to sign up as a new employee, select how many days you want to work, and that prorates your remuneration based on a level you're comfortable with. You can select the amount of holidays you want every year. You can select the benefits that you want a part of your life. So a younger person might not necessarily be too interested in health insurance, because I know in the US it's very different to Australia, but someone older that might want to do it. So you're going to be able to drag and drop your ideal benefits package, employment and benefits package. And that's including increasing money into your superannuation or savings, pre-tax donations, all these little things that we often don't optimize. You'll be able to drag and drop that stuff, and your HR manager simply just sends you an invite to come join the company. Your onboarding comes through there, and then you are working on your own terms, paid the amount you feel comfortable with based on the role that you've been obviously offered. And then the company wins as well, because they get someone that they wouldn't traditionally be able to attract with a rigid construct of employment. And they get these awesome people that come out of nowhere, like return to work mums. I would hire 10 of those people.
Oh, yeah.
Return to work parents, I should say parents. That's sort of shifting now, because I used to coach a group of new mums when I used to be a fitness coach. Single-handedly the hardest workers you'll ever meet, because they have a busy life, goals outside of it, and they just simply want to get it done. Hire a bunch of return to work parents for 32 hours a week, or whatever that is, for that 4-day work week. You will get them outperforming just a bunch of people you slap together for a mandatory 5-day a week job any day of the week. I would put money on that almost.
This is my favorite prediction ever. It's going down in history. I am putting my stamp on this as well. I love that idea. First of all, I wrote an article recently for someone or somewhere. I don't know if it was LinkedIn. I can't remember. Once the week has gone, I can't remember anything. that's my fatal flaw.
Join the club. Join the club.
Right? Maybe it's just my age. I don't know, but whatever it is, I can't remember a thing. I talked recently in this article about how retirees are an untapped resource for the labor market. And it is because of this. I mean, we're talking about true autonomy and flexibility. People, working parents, retirees, college students, whoever, whatever that looks like, their barrier to entry in the workforce is usually committed number of hours in a week, the timing to work, the pay, and the benefits. Like, it's usually somewhere in those four spheres, right? So it's like, if you just, I love this idea of giving, like, the truest form of autonomy and flexibility is letting someone have this self-determination to say, this is how many hours I want to work, and this is what I want to earn. If it were up to me, I would probably want to work like part-time, making the same amount because I can churn out the same productivity, right? So, and there are people who are like, well, I'd rather work 50 hours a week, but fewer hours in the day. Like, I'd rather work more days, but fewer. Like, there are people all over the map in that way. And to your point before, when you try and fit everyone into the same box, you have attrition at all sides. So I love this prediction. I'm excited to see it happen. Hey, maybe in a year we'll come back and we'll do this again.
We're even start like we're going to be the biggest users of our own products. So we're just about to go out and raise again off the back of what we've done. But what we're going to do is actually we're starting with a distributed workforce. We're going to hire people internationally from the start. And the best part about, well, one of the favorite parts about what we're building is we can reward people regardless of jurisdiction the same way. Yes, we have to fit inside their local leave construct and rules, but then the leave as a currency bit, because it's a currency we've created. I'm going to coin it because I've never heard it used before. So I've got to be the inventor of something, right, in my life. Not just problems, not just problems for people. So that's going to be the bit. So you'll be able to appeal to those people that are retired that just want to do 1 to 2 days a week. The best thing about it, a lot of these people that are retired still want to work, and some of these people, because of their backgrounds, they have so many rich insights that you can draw upon to make good decisions. And if you look at any sort of business person, man or woman, that's getting to retirement age, they usually don't stop working. They participate in boards. They do all sorts of other things as well. Then you've uni students. But the bit I love about distributed teams, and we talk about finding those winners for that cultural piece. My co-founder, Kushal, he's Indian descent, and we can go back and hire people in India to help them sort of get a foot up in their career, because they're great on tech, they're super diligent, they've got great cultural values that align to what we're trying to do. And one of the big things I sort of went on this journey to solve, and then Kushal joined me in this program, is if we can stop someone burning out and ruining their financial trajectory for 3 to 5 years afterwards, which is what happens, by the way, or we can help someone jump a socioeconomic class in their life, regardless of where they are in the world. Haven't we just changed the world in itself? Like, that's the sort of impact this thing has. And that's why leave is so important. Everyone has it. It's the one benefit that we've almost forgotten about over the years because it's so antiquated. It can change people's lives, whether it's giving them a break from work when they're going through a hard time. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but we've had so much legislation change here around paid parental leave, grief leave, around losing, like miscarriage leave, and all sorts of things.
We need more of that. We're still in a questionable place.
Yeah. Where I'm also on the other side of it too. There is now too much of different type of leave. So what like, instead of, you got annual leave that sits on the balance sheet, but then we sit off in that ancillary leave type as well, where it doesn't sit on the balance sheet, but employees should be able to access it. So if it's not legally legislated, you can build an extra week a year, an extra day a week, an extra 2 weeks here, however you want to do it. And it doesn't sit on your balance sheet, but it drives productivity, Staff can peer-to-peer lend it. You can reward it to top productivity.
Ooh.
And then you can trade it, withdraw it, use it. Like, it's
Oh, I
the
love
possibilities are just right in front of you, right?
that.
We've
Leave
had this
as
the
a
whole time.
currency.
Yep, coined it. It's mine.
Coined
If
it.
anyone
You
tries to take it from
coined
me,
the currency.
yeah. I got called a thought leader the other day, and I just laughed. I think you just, in this day and age with social media, I think if you have a bit of a contrarian opinion, or at least a thought process of your own, people think you're an amazing person. But I'm really just basing it off. I'm a very average human being, and I'm basing it off very average and available data.
I'm going to go
This
ahead
isn't
and say
sexy.
you're not that average considering your background and how many lives you've led so far in one lifetime. Not so average. You have done a lot. And I realize that we've not met in person and we've really only done this podcast and LinkedIn thing, but that is the way of the future and the way of the present. So I'm just, we're going with it. But I really felt that deeply about the thought leader thing. There's some words now that even when I use them, I kind of gag a little bit because it's just the words that are just overused. And it's true. When you have a thought process of your own or you're a critical thinker, it's like the most incredible thing to someone, but actually we all should be that way. And
Absolutely.
you know what?
And when it comes to our own benefits, it should be.
Yes.
You should be thinking about what actually moves the needle in the right direction for your life.
Yeah.
And following rule, this is probably one thing I've never done well, is follow rules of institutional law and have the way things are done. Probably why I was such a horrible soldier at points. But everyone should have that freedom and autonomy to discover their own fit and find what works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really, really glad that you came on this episode this week at this time, and it just happens to be basically 53 weeks later. Like, that's as close to a year as you can get without being on the year. And it just goes to show you that it was meant to be that we recorded at this time, even though I guess if we had kept our original recording time, it would have been exactly a year, but that's my fault anyway. Feedback from me.
A year. It says a year on YouTube, so like a year is good enough. Like
a year is good, right? We don't need the decimal point, right? Well,
No.
Listen, I am really excited to see what you do with this next year at bit.leave. I mean, to think about what you've done within just 12 months, I mean, I can only imagine the way you're going to change and influence the change in business and the world. I mean, I say it on record all the time, businesses have a huge impact on the world and society as we know it. And now you are part of that game in a totally different way. And I'm really excited to see what you do with it and all of the people who are influenced by bit.leave. So I will pass it to you. Where can everyone learn more about bit.leave and connect with you? And as you know, it'll all be in the show notes too.
Yeah, best place is probably LinkedIn. That's pretty much where I spend 90% of my days at this point. So bit.leave, so the branding gets a little bit confusing, but it's bit.leave.co, all one word, for bit.leave, .co for the website, and then just type in bit.leave for LinkedIn, and that's where you'll find us. More than happy if people want to connect via email into the inbox, which is just brett@bit.leave.co. I'm happy to field questions and sort of answer anything more that people have opinions about. And I'm happy for people to tell me I'm wrong too. We've got a great team. I'm very privileged to have such a fantastic co-founder and people supporting us like Antler. I'm very excited to see what the next 12 months brings.
Same here. And hopefully in a year we can go back to this prediction that you made and see the progress that you've made now that this seems to be a trend. For us.
Seeing a trend, yeah. Well, it's a good trend. I've enjoyed our chat. Thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.